Hey y'all, so back with a cozy reading for this new moon in Sidereal Scorpio, right? So I got my cards here and we finna get into it. All right, so firstly, new moon cycles have a period of 6 months, right? So there is a culmination point that happens with the full moon in the same sign. So we are experiencing a new moon in Scorpio, and 6 months later, which will be sidereal Taurus season, we will end up having a full moon in Scorpio. So these next 6 months will connect to the new moon in Scorpio, right? And so when it comes to lunar cycles in general, like lunar cycles are about the collective experience. Let's see what the next 6 months things will be looking like for the collective. Okay, so we have the King of Swords. Hmm, Three of Swords, and this low-key came out in the reverse, but yeah. Okay, I'm seeing the mind being a point of focus. Be sharp is what I'm hearing. Be on those P's and Q's. Ooh, Knight of Swords. So, just with those three cards, all of them being related to the swords, right? Once again, going back, this is definitely a focus on your mental. And the thing about it is with Scorpio, Scorpio is where the moon debilitates, right? So when we think about the moon being in its debilitation, it is experiencing discomfort, whatever it is feeling, whatever it is sensing is extremely uncomfortable, right? And with Scorpio being a fixed sign, like it's almost like a feeling of being like stuck in a position and like even I would even say forced to come out of certain circumstances where it's like you can literally feel like stuck in a box, like being trapped, like with Moon and Scorpio, it's like being extremely overwhelmed and sometimes even feeling like you're like drowning in your situation, right? Being consumed by life, being consumed by your emotions, being consumed by circumstances, right? And this is where that transformation with Scorpio happens, is because you find a way to prevail regardless of what the circumstance is, right? So like yeah, things are uncomfortable, but it's like you figure out a pathway to get yourself out of there. And I feel like this is what these cards are reflecting. You are figuring out a path to get yourself out of a specific circumstance. That's what these next 6 months is going to look like. So it's like if you've been looking for relief, if you've been looking for a way out of your circumstances, it's gonna happen. But honestly, it will likely happen through moving through the discomfort first. Swords says that you have a big decision to make, right? This is a final decision, not even just big decisions. So, like, we can really see final decisions. Like, we are finally at a point where we're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And this decision is something that has likely been long contemplated, right? You've gone back and forth. You thought about so many alternatives, right? But now you're at a point where, or at least you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm gonna make this decision, but these next 6 months may come with a lot of final and hard decisions. And I really think that those final and hard decisions are reflected here through the Three of Swords. And honestly, although this is like such a cliche theme, I do feel like a relationship can be present here where it's like maybe you've decided, okay, I have to separate myself from a certain person or maybe even people, multiple people, right? And this could be you like uprooting yourself in a way to where it's like maybe the casualties are just people, right? But this decision, this big decision, right? The decisions that you're trying to make are going to benefit you. So, yeah, that may hurt other people also, but is it the best decision for you? And with this Knight of Swords, I feel like this is when life takes a turn. I think that um when you make this decision, life is going to take a turn. And the Knight of Swords is all about like quick, fast, moving fast. And I feel like that's the turn. Like life takes a turn, but it's like whether that's a good or bad thing, it truly I believe depends on the perspective that you're gonna have around it, not necessarily the circumstance itself. Going back to what I said about the moon being debilitated in Scorpio, right? Because it's like we could have good things happening in our physical environment, but if your perspective is to see things more negatively, then that may be the picture that you have around it. And I think for some of you, you really do want to stay in that comfort zone, but you're not going to be able to. Something is going to happen where it's like, yeah, I got to go. It's time for this chapter to close. It's time for this thing to end. I'm out of here, right? I'm out of here, right? I think it'll be something that like it could be a situation that happens that really or just a download something that just makes you realize how you've been held back or it makes you realize that there's so much more to life than what you thought, right? So it's like you're going to be gone with the wind when you finally make that decision because it's like the decision isn't made yet, but it's like here's the decision, here's you, and it's just like the pathway for those two things to meet. And once it happens, it's like your life blows up, right? In a way that you didn't think it would. And just from looking at the bottom of this deck, the Four of Coins here, it's almost like you're so stuck in a position that you don't even realize that like you're more unsafe being stuck where you are than outside of it. Right? So once again, perspective. It's all about perspective. Shifting your mind. Okay, we're gonna get some more messages. Okay, so this is my animal deck. I love this deck. So we have the tortoise. When changes are made for the sake of change itself, resist. I really do enjoy the theme of slowness with this card. It reminds me of Saturn, where it's like have a direction. Don't just do anything. And that's another thing about this right here. Don't be impulsive. Don't just be doing stuff. Like create a plan. Take your time, cultivate it. And you might already have a plan. If there's somebody who really does plan and you have a plan, maybe you just need to get organized. Like I've said in the one video I made, I think it was the Believe in Yourself video, where it's like sometimes you already know what to do. You just lack the skills, right? So the lack of skill in this instance could just be organization. Like you just need to organize everything, get it together, and not be impulsive. We also have the panda enjoy sanctuary of solitude to regain self-esteem and tranquility. Something I was recently saying is how when solitude is used properly, like it's such a great tool because I feel like when you are by yourself, this is really what your individuality shows up, right? Who are you when there is no audience? There is nobody around. It is just you, yourself. Me, myself, and I. Me, myself, and I is all I got in the end. That's what I found out. Like, whoever need that song, right? Going back to that relationship thing. See, I be trying to stay away from the whole relationship themes, right? But that's there for somebody, okay? Take whatever resonates. But be with yourself. Being with self, you can reflect. And like I said, your individuality shows up, right? Because when you are by yourself, you are not your job. You are not all of these different titles, and you are you. So who are you? Who are you? And are you acting as self when you move through your everyday life? Sit in solitude to unmask. Like, what facades have you been putting up? What ways are you exhausted and don't even realize that you're exhausted? Or maybe you do realize you're exhausted, right? It's like sit back with yourself and give it your self time to give yourself time to rest, give yourself time to heal. That's also what this 6 months needs to be about is healing, right? It's taking time to like slow down and be like, okay, figure out like ground, do some grounding. I think it's so important to sit with yourself because this really helps you understand the direction you want to go in life. It helps you understand who you are and where you're actually moving and the motivations behind everything. Like you really just get to sit with self. And it's like being in solitude, right? What is running through your mind when you're alone, when you're by yourself? Like I said, without um the titles and oh you're this to me, you're that to me, right? Like when you are alone, what runs through your mind? What runs through your mind? What do you think about? Like what do you feel in your body? Like it's important to be tuned into those things because sometimes our body has been screaming and hollering at us and we have been ignoring it the entire time. And you don't want to get to a point where you've ignored your mind, you've ignored your body for so long that at this point it's screaming at you in a way that you can't ignore anymore, right? Whatever that looks like. Also, bottom of the deck is the lion, all right? Banish loneliness by reaching out to special friends. And this is why I said when solitude is used properly, it's for individuality, right? But it's not to remove yourself from connection with other people. You can practice solitude in a healthy way and still have thriving relationships. Like it's not a black or white situation. It's not I'm either in solitude or I'm around everybody. Like you can be honestly, solitude is a practice. Solitude is a genuine practice. But when you're just like isolating and withdrawing from the world, not letting anybody in, that's really a whole different thing than just being with yourself and taking time for yourself and just having a moments for yourself, right? Because you can have those moments for yourself, you can have that space for yourself, but at the same time when you have put maintenance into your connections, to your relationships. You have people who will check in on you, or depending on how long this maintenance has been going on, you have people who know they know your rhythm. They know like, oh, she just or he just they just they just. chilling. They just in their own zone. Like there's nothing to take personal because there has been a maintenance put into the relationship where it's like, oh, they just off doing their thing right now. You know. All right. So last cards. I'm gonna pull here. I love this deck. Ooh, connect with water. Hydrate or dehydrate, my friends. One, make sure you're drinking your water. Make sure you're eating your water, okay? Because we are in these cold seasons. You can get dehydrated in these cold seasons too. It ain't just the summer. All right. Ooh, and then it's just like with it being the colder seasons now, and there being less sun, so it's not like you can go to a pool or anything, right? I mean, if you're in a tropical area, then yeah, go ahead, do you. But I would say this is an important time to like, of course, hydrate, eat your water, all of that. But also your shower time, your bath time, like let those times be a moment of like leisure, a moment of relaxation, a moment of rest. Like create a whole shower ritual, right? And that can be easy, get you like some lotion spray, you got to shower with your spray lotion on yourself. Like make it a whole ritual, make it nice, like allow yourself to feel good and refreshed, like drink some warm tea in the morning, like just really utilize water in your everyday. Water is alive, y'all. Like, water is truly alive. Like, water has a whole spirit. Like, it's so amazing. Like, there's an entire frequency, wavelength. Like, speak to the water, talk to the water. I have this book. It's Hidden Messages in Water. It's a pretty good book, but yeah, I'll link that. But yeah, also have courage. This is also the other card. Have courage, right? So once again, getting yourself out of those comfort predictability zone to be courageous, to be fearless. Did I say courageous? Okay, okay, yeah. To be courageous and operate out of a state of like one, fearlessness is not literal. It does not mean that you never feel fear and that you get to a point where you're never scared. That is not realistic. Fear is a necessary feeling, right? It's a necessary feeling because sensing danger is just an instinct that you should have. But at the same time, it's knowing what to be fearful of. And I would even say doing the work to really face your fears as well. Have courage, right? Because sometimes being scared of doing things creates stagnancy in our life because we don't want to take certain actions because we don't want to feel specific emotions, or we want to avoid certain consequences, and that's not always real. Myself and that's all I got in the end. That's what I found out. And there ain't no need to cry. I took a vow that from now I'm gonna be my own best friend. Now let's talk about that real quick. Cause I channeled that song and this is an extra special message that goes into that, right? So she made a vow that from now on I'm gonna be my own best friend, right? And let's get into how with Mars being the ruler of this new moon, right? And Mars is in Cancer, very much approaching its retrograde. also, and how that is why solitude is going to be important for you in these next 6 months, because you need to truly get comfortable with your individuality so you can seek the opportunities, the people that you need to actually bring in for yourself, right? And there also needs to be a balance with that, because don't get to the point where you're so comfortable in being by yourself that you become neglectful to relationships, right? And because there can be a lack of discernment on how to navigate relationships in a healthy manner, right? Because healthy relationships have conflict resolution, right? Like in healthy relationships, you're a human being, like we have emotions, right? So there might be a time where you just get irritated about something, right? Or you're in a bad mood, or like anything. Like, we're humans, we have perceptions, we have emotions, we have all of these different things. Like, and sometimes that may clash. That's not the end of the world. And it doesn't mean that just because there's a conflict that it's like, oh, this is going to be the worst thing ever, or they're going to act like this towards me. And then, too, I'm really a fan of talking about stuff like that beforehand. Like, people need to know your conflict language. Like, what is your conflict language? Do you even know what your conflict language is? Are you the type of person to just shut down and withdraw in conflict, right? And if you just shut down and withdraw, do you actually have a will to have conversations to actually work to a resolve? Do you know how to work to a resolve, right? So just sitting down and really getting into that is important, right? It's not just about withdrawing from the world when we're in solitude, but to find purpose in that, right? To come out a better person, to come out with better skills, with better tools, with better resources.